Okay, what up, YouTube? This is my first YouTube video ever, and I'm going to be covering a very special topic, one that's been on my mind for a long time, and I've been like wanting to write articles on this and blah blah blah, which I will do, but I think it warrants its own video. And the topic of this video is the spiritual narcissist slash sociopath person. And okay, so what I'll go through in this video is basically I will describe my experience with kind of an extreme version of this type. It can be even more subtle. This person, I don't know if they're a narcissist or a sociopath because I'm not a psychologist, but they've definitely demonstrated some very concerning traits that a narcissist and sociopath have. So I'm going to talk about what that is. My experience with that, and so my story basically, which is hilarious, but not actually, but we're gonna laugh about it. So I'll tell you my story, then I'll tell you the signs, and this is not an exhaustive list. You might have more signs than just what I mentioned, but I'm choosing these signs because I can give concrete examples based on my story. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll also talk about kind of like owning your part in it, because I do believe that we do need to take accountability for finding ourselves in this situation, and that's how we learn from them, and that's how we grow. So, the spiritual narcissist slash sociopath, aka what I like to call false consciousness bro. Okay, so what this is basically, it is someone who has narcissistic and sociopathic traits, but it's super hard to detect because this person might have a legitimate, they might actually be interested in spirituality, or they have an illegitimate belief in it in the sense that they don't actually believe in it, but they're using that kind of to get away with more narcissistic slash sociopathic behavior. So because false consciousness bro is into spirituality, allegedly or not, could be real, could be not, you're more likely to kind of ignore or kind of like bypass or not really trust yourself as much in the situation, because you're thinking, oh, this person is spiritual. And when I think of a spiritual person, I think of someone who, tries their best to be honest, to be good to people, to be self-reflective, to own up to their mistakes and to kind of like grow from them. But when you're dealing with a narcissist or sociopath, they don't necessarily exhibit those behaviors whatsoever. So that's why false consciousness bro, as I like to call it, is really hard to detect, and it's a bit of an epidemic because I've come across this person a few times, but this is like the most extreme example so far. So that's why I want to talk about this and let people know that this is a thing, and that, even if someone tells you that they're spiritual, or that they have a belief in spirituality, or that, you have great conversations around that topic, you still need to be cognizant of your own intuitive feelings about this person, as well as any sort of red flags that you would normally look for when you are like looking to date someone. Because I'm talking about this in a romantic slash dating situation, but I mean, false consciousness bro can be any gender. I'm just saying bro because I'm a female and I date guys. But false consciousness bro can appear in spiritual type friendships, or your family member. But regardless, do not let their interest, real or not, in spirituality kind of blindside you and like make excuses for them, etc. Because some people who are narcissistic or sociopathic or have those traits might hide behind that, or even use that to kind of deflect and to normalize their behavior. But you still need to be on guard for any intuitive signs that you're getting, because that's the biggest thing. Your intuition is always going to tell you something's off, or any of the other signs that I'm going to get into. So without further ado, I'm going to tell you this effed up story, but I'm going to share it with you because I think it's important and there's a lot of good lessons to draw from here. So basically, I'm going to call this person, what should I call him? Let's call him Gustavo, because he did also make this passing comment that he's kind of a spiritual Gustavo, okay? So, Gustavo and I met on Tinder, which is always the start of a great story, right? But honestly, I do have friends who got married and they met on Tinder, so, just be open, right? That's what I thought. So, Gustavo and I met on Tinder, and in his profile, he said that he was open to platonic relationships or otherwise. But he was otherwise, single. Although, according to him, he would probably say, well, I didn't say that I was explicitly single. I just said I was open to platonic relationships or otherwise. That's a narcissistic little thing / trick, which I'll get into later. So anyways, we meet up and he picks me up, and, at no point during this first meeting did he mention that he was in a relationship at all, none of that. So you kind of see where this is going. So we left the restaurant and we hung out in his car, and we had like a great conversation, good time, etc. Then he dropped me off at my car and I went home. And then another time that we met up, he told me at this point that he was polyamorous, and this is my first time coming into contact with polyamory. I've never heard of this shit. I don't know what this is. Not that that's an excuse, but even when he told me, my body was kind of like, what is this? What is this polyamory you speak of? Okay, and so anyways, I definitely felt very shifty in that meeting. I remember that, looking back, I felt something was off, and we were physical for the first time during this meeting, and I even, my body kind of was like, no, don't do this, but I ignored it. So anyways, that happened. And then after that meeting, I messaged him because my intuition was acting up, and I was like, hey, we need to investigate this and we need to look into what this polyamory thing is. So I messaged him to discuss what he meant by being polyamorous. And in that conversation, we had a phone call about this, I told him that I am a monogamous, I believe in just being with one person at one time, and that I didn't want to get involved with someone who was seeing multiple people at multiple times. And then we had this really convoluted discussion about what polyamory is, and he told me he didn't even know if he was really polyamorous, and then leaving this kind of potential impression that maybe he isn't, and if this works out between us, we can discuss this type thing. And I actually later on we did have that conversation where if we start spending more time together, then we can talk about where this is going. But also that's clearly him trying to control the conversation. This is another sign, they're always trying to control the pace and control how things are heading. So anyways, we had this convoluted discussion, which this is in itself was a red flag, because I left the conversation kind of confused and with bits and pieces here and there. And I told him in this conversation, I was like, I've been hurt before, and I'm doing my best to kind of protect myself here because I don't want that to happen. Hence me telling you I'm monogamous, etc. And he kind of had this convoluted way of explaining no one can hurt you. And that's something you create in your mind. And I felt kind of this is bullshit, but then also part of me did buy it too. Trust me, I'm gonna be honest, I'm taking full accountability for the places that I was not kind of cognizant enough. So anyways, we had that conversation, and in hindsight, this was him manipulating kind of the situation to his advantage. And in this conversation, he didn't mention anyone else in the picture, so it created this impression that he's poly, but he's single, and he's he doesn't even know if he's polyamorous. So it's kind of this open situation right now. So I was basically under the impression that this bro is single. Then we met up another time, and we hung out the whole day together, and we had an amazing day. That was actually kind of life changing, because We just, I don't know, I won't get into the details, but it was like a really like eye-opening experience. Like we learned a lot from each other and it was just a great time. Um, and then the next day we saw each other again. Like that's how intense it was. And I remember he left my place and I went to yoga. And then during yoga, I had this like horrible feeling like something was off yet again. Anyways, I'm like, oh, I don't know, but I'm not gonna do anything about this just yet. Like, let's just see what's up. Like, duly noted, something shifty here. And then so this bro goes, Gustavo, bro slash Gustavo goes to he goes somewhere else for vacation for like a couple of days, and we keep in touch over WhatsApp during this time. And then when he gets back, we meet up, and then he tells me during this meeting that a close friend slash former partner with whom he had traveled with had formed breast cancer. So someone close to him had developed breast cancer. And, you know, this is a former partner. She now has a girlfriend, but that he's in close contact with the family. And so he basically, like, during our meeting, like, had created this impression that this is, like, an ex, but there's still, like, it's still an important person to him because of, like, the fact that they traveled together, whatever. And then he mentioned that she's in a relationship with someone else. So it had created him withholding certain pieces of information, which I'll get to later, created this impression that she is a former partner, because he explicitly said that, and she's dating someone else. So this is not someone that's like currently in his life whatsoever, romantically, like that they have a connection still, but it's not romantic because this girl is with someone else. And then bro goes to Miami again and returns, and it just so happens that he is going to the same DJ show as I am. So he's like, do you want to make a plan to go together? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. Although in my head I'm thinking, kind of just like want to go with my friend because I'm not really like with you, and I might find like cute guys there. So yeah, that would be better. But, you know, I also kind of like you too, and I'm developing this bond with you, so I'll go with you. So we go to this DJ show together, and at one point, he pulls me aside and asks me not to make any romantic gestures towards him, kissing or otherwise. And because there was many mutual friends of him and this girl with breast cancer at the show, and he didn't want to, like, upset her, which I kind of understand, because like if you are going through, if you have breast cancer and you kind of like are like, you don't really want that additional sort of stress in your life. Like I was being understanding and like seeing it from that point of view. Like if you had feelings there and you're seeing like an ex with someone else and it gets back to you, I understood that from that perspective. I got that. However, I was still really hurt by that. Like, that's really, you know, you're going out with someone that you're kind of dating, and like, you want to be all like lovey and dovey. And he's like, just, you know, just don't kiss me. But then he said something afterwards where he was like, but I really want to go home with you, blah, blah, blah. Like, and it was just this like looking back on it, it was kind of like him devaluing me in that situation. And then like, building the situation back up by being like, but I like really like you and I want to be with you and all of this. And, you know, it was just a lot of like playing with me right there. Anyways, okay, so yeah, anyways, that night we did actually leave together, and he tells me that he's like so in love with me. I'm not just a hookup, that I'm a cornerstone in his life. And I know that sounds crazy, but like we did develop a very deep connection. So I was like, yeah, like I know that I'm more meaningful to you than just being like some whatever hookup, etc. Like we did have a lot of very deep conversations, and we connected very deeply. Okay, and then we met up yet again another time, and he tells me during that meeting that he's like getting really attached to me. And then I tell him at that point, you know, I know you're poly, and if you sleep with someone else, it's really going to hurt me. Like, that's when I bring this whole thing up again. And then I learn in that interaction that he has always been in an open relationship with this woman with breast cancer, despite her ongoing relationships with his current girlfriend. So this is a poly situation. Basically, he has a primary person that he didn't tell me about. And then he claims he wasn't with her for the last little bit, that they were like very separate, and that, you know, that's why he didn't mention it. But basically, nonetheless, I learned down the line, because at this point now in the situation, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be involved in any of this polyamory shit. And I'm sorry if someone watching this is polyamorous, but that shit is not for me. So that's what I'm referring to it as shit. So I was like, I'm not going to become involved in this whatsoever. And basically at that point, things went really downhill. Like, it was a lot of like pulling away and then pulling in. And that's when I saw more of the narcissistic / sociopathic type of things happening. And I eventually learned that he's actually engaged to her. So it's not even like, oh, this is like whatever, another person in the picture. Like, he's here because he's not from my country. He's here in this country because he's engaged to her. So he misrepresented himself to me and misrepresented the nature of his relationship. So yeah, that's the story, and that's like the bare bones of it. But I'm going to now get into the sorry, I'm just pulling up this document because I'm new to YouTube and we need to make notes when we're new. So I'm just running up the warning signs, because like I kind of told you the broad brushstrokes, but there was so many warning signs through all of this, and like I really just hope that this saves someone their sanity and their sense of perception, because your sense of perception can get really messed with in these types of situations. So the first sign is that your intuition does not lie. Your intuition will tell you that something is off. So with this situation, I generally felt like there was something off with this the whole time, and I felt like he had a very dark, sort of shady energy to him. And I kept getting intuitive signs throughout. For instance, that time after yoga where I kind of like had this bad feeling in my chest. Then one time, like later on when things were ending between us, I had a moment where, after he left my apartment, I felt this like deep darkness in my chest, and I suddenly had this impulse to take a bath with Epsom salts and and I started like looking up the meaning of gaslighting, because I was like, that conversation was fucked. Like there was something there. And I learned like after the fact that I had had a psychic attack, because the Epsom salt and like the bath is like your own attempt to restore your own energy. And with narcissists and sociopaths, they are energy vampires in the sense that they will feed off of your own energy through their own manipulation. So he had, even though there was good parts and good times with him, he had a tendency to go into his vampire archetype, and that is exactly what had happened there. So first sign, your intuition will never lie to you. And after this experience, I actually got this like really beautiful little ring that reminds me of my intuition and following my intuition, because I feel like that crystal pointing up is like, you can trust this direction. So always listen to your intuition. And with me, like, I was like, but I want to know what's wrong with them. Like, I want to know why this feels shady. Don't wait to find out, because you're gonna get fucking heartbroken, okay? Don't wait to find out. The next sign is love bombing. So this person will tell you, you're so beautiful, you're so special, you're so important to me, you're such a cornerstone in my life. Like they'll really boost you up, and as humans, we love that feeling. So we get kind of addicted to it. And we want to believe that, and like we really fall for that. But the thing is with love bombing is that it usually follows with a devaluation stage where they'll just kind of devalue you in small backhanded ways. And like if they really truly felt the way that they felt about you, their actions would add up. So like with this person, he would say something like, I've dated lots of beautiful women like you. So it's like a compliment, but it's backhanded in the sense that like he kind of elevates himself to be this special person, but then it's like, oh, you're a dime a dozen type thing. And they also use love bombing to recapture your attention and to kind of mask the deterioration of the relationship. So with me, he would like persistently say, I love you, and like, you are so important to me, you're so special, even when things weren't adding up. Like, even when he would like try to squeeze me in between his like crazy neurotic schedule, or like show up hours late, and then as I learned down the line, like lying to my face, things like that. So love bombing. Third sign is that their words don't match up with their actions. So as I kind of said before, they will say that they love you, but their actions will indicate otherwise. So like, for instance, they'll say, oh, I have a Christmas present for you. Like, it's so special and it's handmade and I have to go pick it up. And then Christmas rolls around and they're like, I'm sorry, it's late. Like, I'm really busy. I didn't have time to pick it up. And then January rolls around, February rolls around, and the gift's not there. So like, they just don't follow through with their actions. They'll be like really late for things and not apologize for that, like kind of a disregard for your time. Another big one is like, they'll make promises about the future as like their hook, and then they won't follow through on that. So it's kind of like this indefinite sort of hook that you're waiting for. Sorry, this indefinite thing that you're waiting for, and that's their hook. And that's what happened with the Christmas present. That is essentially like a hook. So their words don't match up with their actions. The other one is gaslighting. So gaslighting is a form of manipulation, and it's basically where someone plays with your with the perception of your reality and makes you question your own beliefs and their legitimacy. And so some signs that you're being gaslit are people playing with the meaning of words so that they're essentially redefining what the meaning is and therefore affecting your perception of the situation, which makes you question the legitimacy of your own thoughts. I know, it sounds so crazy. So there's that. Conversations that go around in circles and leave you feeling confused and disoriented. Telling blatant lies and white lies. And being made to feel guilty when you call out their behavior so it looks like you're the one in the wrong. So those are just small examples of gaslighting. In my own situation, for instance, one example is that he would say something like in that conversation where he was like, don't show affection. And then he would follow with like, I'm polyamorous. I've always told you, I've always been honest with you. So essentially he's changing the definition of honesty to mean that someone who is honest is someone who tells you a piece of the truth, a white lie. So in this way, he's playing with my own definition of honesty, where to make it seem like, because he did tell me this half-truth, it's kind of the truth, even though my definition of honesty includes half-truth. So it's like playing with the perception of like what's honesty. And like another example is like when I'd be like, you were dishonest with me, he'd be like, I drip fed you information. So that also is a way to obscure the dishonesty, because they're trying to create the impression that they were being honest because they were telling you the information, but just at a slow pace. So therefore nothing is wrong here. So it's just these little things. And when you take that and then you have someone who purports to be spiritual and like is interested in all of these topics, like it really messes with your whole perception of them, and you're like more willing to be like, okay, like maybe. So that's why it's really insidious when someone is a narcissist or sociopath and they have a spiritual interest. And also another way that I was gaslit too was like we'd have these conversations that went in circles and left me confused and disoriented, and he'd say that they were like, that we were expanding our consciousness right now. And part of me was like, yeah, I kind of guess so, because like I am exploring all these concepts and shit. But no, like if someone is manipulating you and they're trying to tell you that you are expanding your consciousness right now, That's not a consciousness expanding conversation. That's considered manipulation. It's manipulation, okay? Consciousness expanding conversation would be like having an open conversation about the different theories of life in like a friendly debate, not one where the definitions of words are being twisted around and where you're being made to question your own boundaries and your sense of perception. The other sign is triangulation. So there's different types of triangulation, but the one I want to talk about is the love triangle because that's what happened here. And so this is some stuff from Psychology Today, and basically, this method is where someone creates love triangles among people that the narcissistic abuser depends on for their daily fix of attention. And basically, this confirms their own sense of like value and grandiosity to the world because they have all these people like chasing after them and these supplies. And in my situation, he did several things along these lines to create this perception of himself as desirable and in demand, while at the same time making me question my own desirability. So, for instance, the fact that he was engaged and like never disclosed that from the very beginning of our conversations around monogamy and polyamory. So he kind of like intentionally created this love triangle right there. Then I mentioned the thing about his comments where he would say, like, I dated lots of beautiful women like you to make himself seem more in demand, me less so. And also because he was polyamorous, but then also at the same time was like, I don't know if I really am. It also created this like really convenient way for him to kind of flirt with other women and like mention going on dates with other women. And there was one incident like when things were falling apart, because this all happened within like a span of a few months, so it wasn't long, but he would be like, I went on this like date with this woman and like of course she fell for me because I was like talking about higher spiritual topics. And he actually did say that, so that was like him kind of giving away his stupid spiritual Gustavo moves. And yeah, so like stuff like that, like kind of like being like, yeah, you know, I'm polyamorous, but then I don't know if I am, but I'm still going to continue dating. So it's like, it's not respecting the fact that like you are seeing one another and that, you know, one person expresses the fact that they want to only be with one person. So triangulation, creating love triangles, creating drama out of this, having multiple sources of supply, justifications for cheating, whatever. It's all of that. Another sign is that they push boundaries and they don't respect them. So narcissists can't tell where they begin and you end, and they unconsciously view people as extensions of themselves, and they regard other people as primarily there to serve their own needs, and they put their own needs in front of other people. So they just have like supplies around them. That's what it's referred to as a narcissistic supply that caters to their own personal desires, and they don't think of people independently as independent entities who might have feelings. They see nothing wrong with it. So yeah, very obvious in my situation where, you know, he knew upfront that I was monogamous and I didn't want to get involved with someone who's dating someone else, and yet he knows that and he's engaged, but he decides to not tell me that information and proceed forward. So just blatantly selfish right there. And once I found out that he was actually engaged, and then we sat down to have the conversation to just end things, because I told him that I don't want to be romantically involved with someone seeing someone else and that I never really wanted to be. And then we'd have our conversation around this. And then he'd talk about ending things slowly and a suggestion that we could perhaps go on a date. And like really like twisted things like this. And that if we're just friends, you know, we can't pretend that we've never been lovers and we might like kiss or hold hands. So there's like clearly this person seeing nothing wrong with kind of continually like stepping over your boundaries and putting their self-interest first. And then another last sign that kind of pours into the last one is that they won't let go easily. So as long as a narcissist has fresh supply that is like now engaged in their little game and into them, they're not going to let go of this person easily. Sorry, it's getting a little dark here, so I'm just going to turn on the light. I don't know if I like that. Okay, not do anything crazy with lighting. Okay, so they're not gonna let go easily, basically. And so for that reason, like at that point, especially because you might be emotionally interested and attached to this point, it's not going to be easy for you to let go. But my advice is, I mean, despite any sort of alleged connection that you might have developed with this person, walk away fast and don't look back. Do not look back. Because what happened in my situation was that I was attached and I basically would block, cut off contact, and then I would feel kind of bad for being so harsh. But then I started to see that every time I came back, it was the same sort of like gaslighting, manipulation, stuff in circles. And for instance, our last conversation we had, he finally admitted, and I don't know if it was like an honest apology or like recognition or admission. He was like, yeah, like, I'm sorry that this made you feel this way and that I withheld this information, blah, blah, blah. And then he would start going into like sentimental stuff about, it hurt, because I would say, I told him at this point, I'm like, you have lost all credibility. And, like, I don't believe anything you're saying, which I truly didn't at this point, because I had caught so many like white lies and things that didn't add up. That I didn't believe him. And as he was talking, he was going into talking about how, what was he talking about? He was talking about how, it hurts him that I don't think that he's an honest person and that I don't believe anything he says because I'm one of the few people that he's actually shared himself honestly with, which, like, if that was true, I'm all for that and I hear that. But because this person has already shown me like that they're not an honest person, I don't believe that. And I believe that that was part of the manipulation, and that was like him pulling on my heartstrings. And sure enough, I felt that like warmth in my chest, like, oh, like, and his phone died. And I had an intuitive feeling right there that like that was sort of a protective thing for me, and the phone died intentionally. So just walk away. Honestly, it's not worth it. Like, even in my situation, like, even though we would have had a last conversation about this and it maybe would have closed things off, I just didn't want to have any of it. I'm like, why should I waste more of my time to someone who has blatantly lied to my face and actively manipulated me? Like, no. Walk away and hold your head up high and know that you deserve better in this life. You truly do. And if you don't want to meet in person to end things, there's nothing wrong with texting this person and being very clear with them and saying, you don't meet my standards for how I expect someone to treat me in any of my relationships. So I'm afraid that we can't continue this. Take care. Goodbye. Just make it clear that this person doesn't meet your standards. And that's it. So, and one more thing, and I think this goes without saying because it's like a theme throughout this entire video. Lies and white lies are the very last thing. I mean, if there is no trust in a relationship, then what can you build that relationship out of? Like that, if someone is actively lying, white lying to your face, I would say that's a sign that there's some narcissism and sociopathic behavior / traits going on there. So that's my last sign. Okay, now, the other thing about this is I really do believe in owning, our role in sustaining these situations, because if you want to think of like this whole drama as a play, there's the villain and then there's the protagonist. And, I think it's very easy for people to, I think in these situations, if you have a victim mentality, it's very easy for you to get caught up in the play with the narcissist. So I'm going to now go into a couple of things you can do to own your own part in a situation that you may have found yourself in, similar to mine. So I think it's really important to learn about the victim, to learn about archetypes, and to learn about the victim archetype and the types that they tend to attract. So I'll be honest with you guys, like my thing is that I think I've definitely played the victim with guys before, and being a victim is a choice. It really is a choice. And once you read about the victim archetype and mentality, you can start making better decisions. You can start putting in boundaries into your life for how people ought to treat you and what is not acceptable treatment. So I'm going to put links below on some stuff I found that's really helpful about victim mentality and the types that they tend to attract. They tend to attract the energy vampire, the narcissist, and the con artist, along with like a few others. And read about that, and that will be super eye-opening as to like understanding the patterns that you might attract to yourself. The other thing is to learn about boundaries and how to enforce them. So it's very important not just to communicate your boundaries verbally, but also through your actions. And I will admit that, like, because I was attached emotionally in this situation, I would communicate my boundaries and then I wouldn't follow through. Or even in the very beginning, like, my boundary is that I want to be monogamous with someone and not with someone who has polyamorous beliefs. But I went for it. I went for it anyways because I was like, I don't know, maybe, like, you just don't think about how situations will pan out. So I would really say, like, learn about boundaries and how to enforce them. And I'm going to put another link down here to an excellent article. And along those lines, so the other thing is to get really clear about what your values are. Like, be really honest with yourself and identify what a deal breaker is for you, or what your deal breakers are, so you can really walk away when you see them. And like, just believe people when they tell you that they are X. And if X is a deal breaker for you, then just leave. Like, don't allow any sense or need for validation or acceptance from other people to stop you from walking away. Even if like you're finding it really hard dating and like you're really easily pulled in by people who show an interest in you, be strong and walk away when you see deal breakers. And along with that, so the next point is to be true to yourself and your values. That's it. Be true to yourself and your values. And then the very last one, very important one, is always honor your intuition and what it's telling you. Your intuition will communicate to you in a number of ways. It will be a feeling, a thought, a bodily sensation. Always listen to your intuition, okay? This will save you a lot of heartache. So with that, just do a quick summary. Basically, false consciousness bro, someone who is into spirituality or not, or like legitimately or otherwise, but they have narcissistic or sociopathic type tendencies, which kind of won't be as noticeable or can kind of go under the radar because you wouldn't expect this from someone who's into spirituality, but it does exist. Some warning signs to look out for. Your intuition tells you something is off. Extreme love bombing. Words don't match up with actions. Gaslighting. Triangulation. And not respecting boundaries and pushing your boundaries, and won't let go easily, and and in not letting go easily, we'll restart the process of like love bombing, triangulation, all of that stuff. And so yeah, those are some signs to look out for. And I just want everyone to have excellent, happy, healthy relationships and just protect yourself. Just protect yourself. Okay, until next time, bye.